All right, in the overview here, I talk about the exhaust. This is the dump that I'm talking about. I basically cut a lateral in place underneath this thing, behind the cat. I cut a slot in the side, welded a tube on, and I did this probably the first year I had it. I've had the Cruiser for about 5 years now, so. And basically what I did was I made a flange up, I welded it onto the tube, put a blind plate that matched the flange with the gasket and 4 5/16 bolts to cut it loose. And I drove it, for many years like that, but now the wife is driving this for like a year and it's way too loud and it drones a lot, which it does, but the performance increase by having this blind off is amazing. So when I do the test run, the idle, and we go for a road drive on it, I'm going to have the dump open. Then I'll cap it back up at the end and let you hear the exhaust the way it is for her driving it. And it's definitely a little bit louder than stock because I did some mods on the muffler, which I'll go over that later. So now I'm going to pull off the blind, pull it in the back, and then give you the overview. Okay, here you have it. Here's the blind plate right here with a gasket on it. There is the open exhaust, which took me one bolt sticking in there. I don't know why, but it took me a total of about a minute to take this off, and now we have open exhaust. And you can still run through the muffler, but what's going to happen is the exhaust is going to take the path of least resistance, and when you pound and that turbo starts spooling up, it can just dump, and you don't have to be worried about pushing through a muffler and killing your HPs. I'm going to give you a first start up now with the dump. Inside the car with the windows down, got the sunroof cracked. I'm going to drive it in the backyard where I did the video on the Bullet and Richie's 2000. Here we go. So you can hear it's got a little rumble. I haven't heard this in a while because I've had it capped up for Megan, like I said. Just cut my finger somehow, I don't know how. So I've had it capped up for Megan, and I love the dump open, without a doubt. I would leave it if it's up to me if I was driving a car every day, but I get it. Rich from 2RC Productions here, and we're here with an overview of my 2006 PT Cruiser GT. To give you a little background, I'm a Chrysler fan and I'm a Ford fan. I grew up with Mopars, and back in the 80s, the 2.2 Chrysler Turbo was a cool little unit. They had the Charger, the GLHS. My buddy of mine had a Dodge Daytona. My uncle had a LeBaron with the 2.2, and they were good runners, but they ran 7 pounds of boost, and they ran like mid-16, 16.1, 16.3. And I was a big fan of the SRT Neon when it first came out. I just thought it was awesome that Chrysler poured something into, a turbo motor, that 0 to 60 time, as quick as they were, and quarter mile time as quick as they were. And they basically came out with those to compete with the foreign market. And they were awesome cars, and I always kind of wanted one at that time, but it just wasn't practical. At the point in time of my life with the kids and stuff like that. So about 5 years ago, I was looking for a vehicle I had the work truck, obviously, but with 3 kids, sometimes you need to get in the car and go somewhere. And I had nothing. I had a, Ford Ranger that couldn't fit anybody in it. So I had to look for something, and the Neon wasn't really practical, and the wife can't stand them. She just don't like the body style. So I started looking at PT Cruisers, and if I was going to get a Cruiser, I wanted the turbo motor because I wanted the SRD motor. So I ended up finding this. Seats 5 passengers, and it is the GT, and I bought it 5 years ago with 27,000 miles on it. These went for almost 27,000 new, and I got it for 10,000 out the door. And obviously you can see the condition of it now 5 years later. Megan's been driving it now, and it just turned over 52,000, so it still has really low mileage. And it's probably one of the cleanest PT Cruisers around. We get a lot of compliments on it. I get more compliments on this than the Mustang, more attention, because most Cruisers you see are trashed. And the majority of them are the standard 150 horsepower naturally aspirated motor. So let's look under the hood here. They come outfitted with a 2.4 liter turbo. In 2006 model year, this is the 2nd generation Cruiser. The first one was more of a Plymouth design, and they were 215 horsepower. Well, they did some improvements on the cooling, oil cooling jackets and stuff like that, and new fuel injectors in it for this year. Boosted the horsepower to 230, and a lot of people don't like the 2nd generation because of the front end. It's a little bit different. They have the big opening in the bottom for the intercooler, but they smoothed out the lines in the front end. A little more modern than the first generation, was more reminiscent of the early 30s sedans. And that's really what this car is about. The body itself was a retro style car that was brought back to be reminiscent of the 30s sedans. And I remember in 2000 when these first came out, you know, now people either hate them or they love them. And some people just can't stand them. Well, when they first came out, I remember my wife and I at the time were eating in a restaurant, and I saw a car hauler pull in. And it had a bunch of new Chryslers on it. And it had some PT Cruisers on it. And they were all loaded on the truck, and they weren't even out at the dealer yet. This was like first delivery. People were paying big money over the sticker. I mean, $8,000, $10,000 over the original sticker price to get their hands on one. They were extremely popular when they came out. And then what happened is they kind of flooded the market, and over the years they just kind of gradually faded out. And now you see people buying them for the economy purposes because they're affordable, and the versatility of the interiors are pretty much second to none. You could do so much with the interiors, and we'll go over that. But getting back to the power plant, 2.4 liter turbo intercooled engine. And this engine is no joke. You know, I'm going to do a little comparisons to the Mustang because that's what I have. And the Mustang motor is a 4.6 liter, which they used in all kinds of vehicles. You know, the Panthers, you know, the Marquis and the Ford Crown Victoria and the Mustang. You know, it's all basically the same motor with some exhaust tweaks and intake tweaks. This motor was actually made, this configuration was specifically built, you know, for the SRT4 Neon and the PT Cruiser. Now, when this motor came out in the Cruiser, it was a pretty big deal because obviously this is a heavier package than the Neon, but it could still push this bodied car here, this bigger bodied car, through the quarter in low 15 range, you know, 15.2, which was pretty impressive because if you think back to the Mustangs, like, you know, a 5.0 Mustang, which they did good back in the day, you know, 89 Mustang ran 14.9, 15 flat. GT would run 15.5. So this little 4-cylinder coming out stacking this big bodied car running that time was pretty impressive. But there's a lot more horsepower under the hood to unharness with some hop-ups. And I've read many articles of guys pushing 500 horsepower through this stock configuration. This motor is built to handle the horsepower. Unlike the 4.6 liter, there's some weak points in it. And I know the Mustang has nothing to do with this, but I'm just doing a comparison how this isn't just a standard motor that they popped a turbo on there and walked away from it. It actually has beefed up internals, and it's made to handle the power. So they put a big intercooler on this thing, and with my mods, I'm getting about 14, 15 pounds of boost, which is pretty good. And as far as mods go, what I do have, I don't have anything ridiculous, but I have the exhaust dump, which is huge for letting that turbo breathe. The next thing I have done is the air box is hollowed out. And by hollowed out is when you take it apart, there's a bunch of baffles and pieces in there that you cut out, and you basically open up the air box so it's wide open. And it normally feeds into this opening here in the fender well, but then it's blocked off. So what I did, I don't know if you'll be able to see it underneath here, but I basically, there's an opening here and I put a fitting in there. I cut that opening and put a fitting here so the air can run right in there directly into the air box. And I have a K&N drop-in air filter in there. So that takes care of the intake side, getting some air in there. The next mod, I don't know if you can see down there, is I have the Mopar blow-off valve, which is supposed to give you a cooler charge of air. So when the air starts building in the turbo and it starts heating up, when you let off the gas, it basically clears that charge of air and then gives you a fresh blast of air, which in hopes should be a cooler charge, which should give you a little more power. As far as power on the dyno or by the seat of the pants, not really. More for the cool sound, I feel, which I like it. This is an automatic with auto stick, and obviously the stick shift with the blow-off valve is way more impressive because in between each gear you're getting that blast of air. This you're only getting it if you give it gas, let off, or you're hard in the throttle and you let off. I recently gave it a full tune-up. It has MSD wires, the thicker wires. I got a brand new coil on it, brand new plugs in it. The cam timing sensor, which is notorious for going bad in this, went out probably 5,000, 6,000 miles ago, which I think is premature, but it started missing through a code, so I put that in there. So it's got the brand new cam timing sensor, fresh tune up. It's got full synthetic oil that I use all the time, and you have to change the oil a lot more frequent in a turbo as well, because of just the heat and the dirt factor. The oil does get dirty a lot faster, so even though it is synthetic, I change it probably every 3,000 still. It's a little bit dirty under the hood here. I usually keep it a little more detailed, but like I said, Megan's been driving it. So front of the car, you could see on the lower portion, the big opening on the bottom is for the intercooler to take all that air in there to give it a cooler charge going into the turbo. Now again, 2.2 Chrysler back in the 80s, 7 pounds of boost. This one's basically double, and it does spike a little bit right off the bat. The other mod I have is the Diablo Sport InTune 1000 can tune, which is supposed to add about 25 horsepower. So the motor itself this year got a boost, like I said, with the better injectors. This motor is the same as the SRT Neon, same thing. The only difference is they changed the intake on the PT Cruiser for clearance. So they changed the configuration a little bit, but it's the same engine. So the Diablo Sport InTune 1000 adds about 25 horsepower. So you're at 230 stock, another 25 with that. K&N drop in, ram air, basically fender well, not ram air, but fender well induction, Mopar blow off valve, and then exhaust dump out the back are my mods on this car. And it does run good. And for the mods that I have, this should be in the mid 14-second range, mid to high. And depending on the temperatures outside, it is warm today. It's probably in the 85 range today, which is going to hurt the performance for sure, because when it drops down to about 50 degrees or so, I mean, it is a noticeable difference by the seat of your pants how much better the car runs. Getting up to the front here, we'll take a look at the wheels. The Cruiser GT comes with a nice set of 17-inch chrome clad wheels. The problem is they fall apart. They pitted up. I sanded them and painted them, and that lasted for a year or so. And then a couple years ago, I went to Discount Tire and bought these MB turbo wheels and put those on. And with new tires, Yokohama rubber, probably only got about 4,000, 5,000 miles on the tires. And I love the look of the wheel. It goes well with the car, and I haven't had an issue with them so far. They weren't terribly expensive, and they're holding up really well. The color is also a very rare color. It's called Magnesium Pearl Coat. And you see very few PT Cruisers in general, let alone a turbo model, with this color. I absolutely love the color. That's one of my favorite things about the car, is the color. And you can see the body. It has some little chips and, you know, a couple little nicks on it. Nothing major, but it's very straight body. And like I say, we try to keep good care of it. Coming around to the back, you always know the turbo model by the GT, and then on the other side you see the designation 2.4 liter turbo high output. There was a 150 horsepower naturally aspirated model, then there was a 180 horsepower turbo light, they called it, which was the 180 horse, and then the 2.4 liter turbo high output for this year was 230 horse. You can see the exhaust pipe in the back, stock muffler, stock tailpipe. What I did to this muffler, because it was a little bit too quiet stock, was I took the muffler off. I completely cut the top of the muffler off. I went inside, I took all the baffles out, I took all the insulation. They're packed with like fiberglass insulation. I pulled everything out, welded the top of the muffler back, put it back on there, and it gives it a really nice throaty sound and opens the muffler up but doesn't drone inside. And the reason that my wife has taken this over is she was going to get a new Jeep, and she decided that she wanted to wait a year and not have a payment. So I pulled this out. Basically, it sits in the garage all the time, never driven in the weather. And I basically told her, well, you could drive this for a year. She's going to get a Jeep next year, and then Ryan is going to take over this, pending he takes good care of it. He's going to be a new driver, so obviously I'm going to watch him. And if I see him messing up, then he's not going to drive it, because I've kept it nice for too long. You could see even the headlights and everything, how clear and nice the headlights are. You know, everything looks like new. Now, getting onto the interior of this car. It's going to be a pretty long video, but I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And I want to go over all the points which make the PT Cruiser cool, and then I'll go over some of the points that I don't like so much. One of the, excuse me, getting over a little cold last week, and my voice is a little screwy, so please forgive me for that. But one of the coolest points of this car, in my opinion, is the interior. A lot of people complain about the second generation Cruiser, and they say, oh, the interior, cheap plastic materials. Well, you know, a lot of cars have cheap plastic materials for the interior, but I read a lot of articles where guys were complaining about this interior and stuff, and I absolutely love the interior. I love the use of the two-tone colors. The seats are nice looking. You know, they have a different upholstery in the center, light and dark, two-tone, light gray in the center. I love the painted surface on the dash to match the outside. It gives it a real retro feel. I absolutely love this interior. I really do. I always have since I got the car. Just the, you know, the satin accents on the steering wheel and the gauges. People complain about the gauges. I think the gauges look great. I love the clock that Chrysler puts in the middle of the center pod. Just a cool little feature. Some people didn't like these docks. I think they're nice. They close off completely. The stereo, I've heard complaints about the stereo. I have no issues with the stereo whatsoever. It's got a single CD player. It's got 6 speakers. It's got tweeters up in the front. It sounds really nice. I mean, it's no booming subwoofer system, but for a stack system, it sounds great. People complain about this. Oh, the paper towel holder. It's a handle they put in there. So what? It's a handle if it helps if you're getting in and out. I've had older people get in here and it helps them out. So I don't mind that as well. Very deep glove box comes with. One other unique feature about the Cruiser is the window switches in the center of the pod. At first you go, why are they in the center of the pod, not on the door? But actually I like it. I think it's cool. It's different. You know, these are cheap plastic, just satiny looking knobs, but no issues. They give you a power outlet up here, a little storage pocket down here, 2 cup holders, coin slots, another cup holder, another slot for storage. I love the shifter, gives it a retro feel as well. This happens to be auto stick, which you can manually shift it up or down if you want to. Some more accents of GT are the racing inspired pedal covers, just like the Bullet has. It comes with GT embroidered floor mats from the factory, and I have some that I put over the top. It has heated seats, it has rear defroster, it's traction control, it has tilt cruise, power windows, power door locks, AC, power moonroof. It's got the universal garage door opener, power moonroof, which is awesome with the tilt and the slide back. So it's got leather interior. It's very loaded up for the cost of, you know, and even now you can buy these even cheaper, way cheaper than I bought this one for. But okay, looking at the front interior, you get a look at that. So seats are a little bit stiff, but they're comfortable. The difference with this car driving down the road is looking over the hood. Like versus like driving in a Mustang, you're down low, you see the long hood sticking out in the scoop. This thing, you're up high and more forward facing, so it's kind of like an SUV inside. Except you can't really see the hood at all. So when you get this thing moving and you're doing 100, I've had it on the expressway many times, 105, 110, and you get this thing moving, it's as smooth as can be. And the fact that you see the road coming so fast in front of you and you can't see the hood, it really feels like you're moving way faster than you are. So very fun car to drive. The GT also had suspension improvements. It was also lowered. It had sport suspension. It's not built to be a drag car. It's built to be an all-around sport vehicle, power handling, economy. You know, that's what it was built for. Here's the back seat. You know, it's got the pockets in the front and back. Nice leather upholstery all the way through. Light gray headliner, which is nice as long as you keep it clean. These have been an issue from time to time. It has the power window switches for the rears right here. And when you get 3 people in the car, if you have the windows unlocked, people's knees get into them and the windows will be going down for no reason. And you'll be trying to figure it out. Here's a fold down dual cup holder with some little change slot. Console here, I'll flip it from here. Which way here? It goes this way. Pulling it the wrong way, I'm used to the Mustang. Let me show you in the front. Forgot to show you that. So you got that little storage part on the top, and then you got the dual part on the bottom with another power outlet. You got the slide out for your arm, so it's just well equipped. 2006 model year, came with a lot of stuff. Also has the auxiliary jack for an iPod that comes standard too, which is very nice because you can hook your iPod up to and run. You got this little cool feature here. When you fold over that seat, you have a nice little tray. If you're driving by yourself, you could fold this flat and it's like a little tray table, which is awesome. These seats fold down flat. This folds down flat so you can fit all kinds of stuff in the interior if need be. You can see how clean this car is. The door jambs and everything is just spotless. There's no rust. Fuel cap here. You'll notice this: premium fuel recommended. Chrysler recommends premium fuel from the factory. Well, with the tune on it that I have, you have to run 93 all the time, so that can be a hampering. For me, it's no big deal because I run 93 and everything. Some people might go, I gotta spend all that money on gas, oh man, you know. So getting to the back here, you got a nice little storage pocket in the back, a little diamond plate I made here and cut and put in the bottom to protect it. You got another power outlet here. You got the jack storage here, and this is the cool little thing here. This here is an adjustable shelf that goes in many different. I'm going to try to do this with one hand. So that drops down in there, and then you got this cool little feature here where you drop this leg. I got this box in the way here, and you prop that up right there. So now for tailgating, you got a nice little shelf out the back. You can sit there, put drinks on it, food, whatever you want. So that's also a cool little feature. And you could shut the lights off. You shut the interior lights off, they'll shut down. You can leave this open. You can play your stereo, whatever you want to do. So it's pretty awesome. So 17-inch wheels, better brakes, better suspension, handling, lowered car altogether, which makes it a GT, and the engine package itself, which makes it a GT. Obviously the engine is the huge thing to get that power. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little spin down the road, and I'm going to give you, I'm going to put the hammer down, give you a little bit of test running in the car, driving and acceleration and exhaust sound. One other thing I forgot to mention in the mod department, up here is a piece of rubber that goes all the way across there. I removed the rubber, and what that does is that seals the back of the hood. I removed the rubber and took out all the insulation underneath the hood, because all that does is hold this heat in, and the turbo cars just put out an extreme amount of heat. They're not overheating, but they just put out a lot of heat. And with the insulation and the rubber in here, it just sits there under the hood. So by taking the insulation out, you get a little bit louder engine outside. You hear the motor running a little more, but it gives the heat a chance to escape without having the rubber seal in the back, and it forms like a cowl induction almost, or cowl extraction of the heat out the back. And I've read many articles on that helps a lot. So like I said, we got the baffles, the intake, the blow-off valve, remove the insulation, remove the rubber, and the exhaust dump. And I don't see myself doing any other options to it or mods to it, because I like it just the way it is. And probably by the time Ryan takes it over, it'll probably have about 60,000 miles on it, and it's an 06, and we're in 2017 already, the middle of 17, so we're doing real good on mileage. Should be around a long time for us. And I thoroughly enjoy driving the car, so I'm going to get to the next phase of this. We'll take a little ride. One other thing I forgot to mention, just did to the car recently within the last month after Megan took it over, is tinted the front windows 20% to match the rest. It just gives it a better look, and it blocks out some of that heat. So that makes a big difference. I'm going to back up here out of my yard. Kind of lumpy, bumpy over here, and get around to the front. We'll get out of it. Try to hold on to the camera the best I can while I'm driving. It's like 88 degrees today. It has this nice computer readout too on the dash that shows you everything digital. 88 degrees today, so this isn't, I could tell this because I'm sweating my butt off when I was outside working. And this isn't the best time to drive this car without a doubt for speed wise, because it's definitely going to hurt it, but we're going to take a little ride. You can hear that blow off. You give it a little gas and you let off. I also had to fix the exhaust today. Exhaust pipe had a hanger that was broke off and it was really making a bunch of noise, so I had to weld that on this morning. We're going to take a little cruise here. Try not to have the wind beat up the camera too bad either. You can hear the idle. It's not terrible. Once you get going, it gets a pretty good drone inside. Hopefully the camera's not. I really have no place to set this thing like I do in the Mustang. You know what's amazing is I live out in the middle of nowhere. I'm out in farm country, and it's getting so crowded I can't even get out of my neighborhood. This is ridiculous. I've been sitting here for 5 minutes already. Motorcycles and cars and semi-trucks and motorcycles and cars and more semi-trucks and motorcycles and cars. There's my opening. I gotta get out. It's insane. I moved out all the way out here to get away from the traffic, and it's still here. Sup, YouTubers, cruising into PT. Test run. Gonna take a little cruise. Pull the windows up a little bit so it ain't too windy. We're redoing this test run because I had a little problem. Megan was having a problem, like I told you, with the lights coming on. Turned out the coil that I just put in it 3 months ago failed again, bad, to the point where it was running on 2 cylinders and erratic misfires in cylinder 2 and 3. So I tested it with my scanner and it showed random misfires, but couldn't pinpoint what it was, so I had to take it into a place in town to put it on a scanner, and they figured it out that it was 2 and 3. And did a compression check and checked a bunch of things and ended up narrowing it down that it was the coil that I just replaced, so I had to put a new one in it. Luckily, they honored the warranty. And I got a Borg Warner coil in it, and if this one fails again, then I'm going with the Mopar one. So, we got the car back yesterday after testing it, putting the new coil in, and it seems to be running pretty good now. So, I can tell the day of the original video it wasn't running right before it started getting really bad, so wanted to redo it. A little bit and pound at it and auto. It's like 0 to 75. So you get a little idea of the sound. Obviously, you don't get a feel of the actual power behind the wheel or sitting in a passenger seat, but you get an idea what it sounds like. I'll kind of do like 40-mile-an-hour roll and just stab it here and you get an idea. You can really hear the turbo screaming out of the exhaust dump. Hear the blow-off valve. So it's a fun car. Like I say, it's definitely in the 14s, high 14 range, I would say, which is pretty awesome for a little 4-cylinder 06 car. It's older technology. But like I say, it'll peak at about 16 pounds is what it's supposed to, and then drops off to about 14 on the boost. And then you can drive it. I like to drive